Hello folks, Troubletcat here, recording for the Zombie Arcade. I'm playing some CSGO, or rather, I did play some CSGO last night. This game I recorded about 1:45 in the morning or something. And I'm now uploading. So, what I wanted to talk about in this video is what I think about CSGO, you know, whether or not I like the game. I think you guys probably get the impression I did, since I said I wanted to make videos about it, and I don't normally intend to make videos about games I don't like. But it's a game that has a lot of problems, despite the fact that I do like it overall, and one that's been somewhat controversial in the community for a number of reasons. By controversial, I mean a lot of people are fucking mad, and they have some good reasons to be mad. Anyway, before I get into talking about the game too much, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about where my opinion is coming from. So I'm not a particularly good Counter-Strike player. I never have been. I've certainly never played at a competitive level, and I almost certainly never will do that, but I am quite an experienced Counter-Strike player. I've played every iteration of the game. I didn't play every single version of the original Half-Life 1 mod. I think the first time I played it was probably in 2000. My monitor just switched itself off. That's interesting. Let me just turn that back on. I think the first time I played it was probably in 2000. I played a lot of sort of the 1.3, 1.5, 1.6, those versions I played a fair bit of. But mostly I only started really playing a lot of CS with the launch of Counter-Strike Source. I also played Condition Zero, by the way, if you're wondering. Yes, I did. Play that, too. Yeah, I played a lot of Counter-Strike Source, and I've played a lot of CSGO, about 300 hours or so of CSGO now. So, although I'm not an amazing player, and I'm definitely not a pro, and I will never be a pro, I am experienced with the games, at least, so I do kind of... And I watch pro matches, and I do pay a bit of attention to the competitive community, so I do have a vague idea of what I'm talking about, even though I'm not a pro player myself, is what I'm trying to say. So, with that in mind, the things that I want from the game are basically... two things. I want it to be fun to play, because I am not a pro player. I'm a guy who just likes to have fun playing video games. And I want it to feel competitive and be based around sort of player skill and tactics deciding the outcome of matches, because that's what CS has always been about. It's always been a skill-based game. And that's one of the reasons I enjoy it. I like the idea that it's actually a competitive game where the better team wins. And overall, I do think that it's fun, and I do think that most of the time it feels like it keeps with the competitive spirit of the series. But there are some big problems, too. The sort of more minor issues and more easily fixed issues, I'd say, are to do with weapon balance, particularly the SMGs, especially the P90. Some of the SMGs are a bit too strong, I think. And shotguns are really fucked up. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. I just want to mention, in the old CS games, basically, buying SMGs on rifle rounds was not really a great plan. Because the rifles would just straight up outclass you in almost every situation, and buying shotguns was something that you would not do. Very, very rarely would you see anybody, seriously, like any kind of good player, buy a shotgun in CS Source or the original CS. And that was actually fine. The game has a system in place where you have this money mechanic, and rifles cost a lot more money than SMGs and shotguns, so it should make sense that they are stronger and better weapons, right? Well, in CSGO, it seemed like they wanted to try a lot harder to make every gun feel useful, and I'm not sure that that was a correct decision. You know, why should... There's no reason that a gun that costs $2,350 should be as useful as a gun that costs $3,100. And I'd say that the situation right now, a P90 is about equally as useful as an M4. And that seems wrong. I'm not saying there should never be a reason to buy the cheaper guns, otherwise there'd be no point having in the game, right? But the reason for that should come from the fact that they are cheaper. primarily. You know, they can be worse, and then if they're cheaper, there is still a reason to buy them, you know, every now and then. And that worked fine. I don't like this idea that SMGs have to be competitive with rifles in some situations. It doesn't sit well with me, and it wasn't really how the game worked in the past. The problem with shotguns I have is primarily inconsistency. I don't like that the pump-action shotguns, and even actually the auto shotgun can do this, can kill in one hit to the body through body armor. I personally don't like that choice. I think it should be at least 2 body shots or 1 headshot. But I could deal with it if it was at least consistent one way or another. Right now, sometimes you'll fire a Nova pump into somebody's chest against their Kevlar armor, and you'll do 85 damage, and sometimes you'll do it at the same range, aiming center of mass, exact same scenario, and you'll do 110 damage and kill them in one hit. And I don't like that inconsistency, because it breaks this competitive nature of the game when you can't predict whether or not the weapon you're holding is going to kill somebody if you shoot them in a certain situation, and whether or not you're going to die being shot in a given situation against a certain weapon. When that becomes inconsistent and unpredictable, it adds an element of luck to the game that I don't feel should be there. Like, an op shot kills you in one hit consistently. You know what's going to happen if you get shot by an op. You know what's going to happen if you shoot somebody with an op. With the shotguns, it's a fucking crapshoot. It's a luck-based gun, and I don't feel that that should work. My suggestion would just be reducing the body damage of shotguns a little bit so that they never kill in one hit to the body against armor, at least. Maybe if the player doesn't have armor, one hit kill would be fine at close range, but that's what I think should be done there. I just want them to make it consistent, though. There are some other balance issues that are things a lot of people would disagree with, but are just feelings that I have about the game to do with the pistol balance, rifle balance, that kind of stuff. Those things aren't such big issues, and I'm happy to let them go, and I'm even open to the idea that I'm just wrong, because a lot of people wouldn't agree with my ideas on balance there. There are some bigger problems, though, aside from weapon balance. Weapon balance has been tweaked a bit in CSGO, and it has improved, I think, overall since launch. Particularly some issues like the pistol balance has been made better. There have been some fixes to that, but there are some bigger issues with the game, some of which have been resolved, and some of which I don't think will ever be resolved, that are really fucking annoying. These are things like issues with the netcode, hit registration, those kinds of things. I'll go into a bit more detail in a second. Footstep positioning. Sometimes you'll hear these footsteps that sound like somebody's right next to you, and then they're across the map in the opposite direction. Or there used to be an issue where you'd get ghost footsteps. You'd hear the sound of footsteps coming from a location where there was no player. That doesn't seem to happen anymore, at least, but there still is an issue with footstep positioning where it's really hard to tell where the sound is coming from when it wasn't like that in previous CS games. Ghost players. Sometimes you'll see... This is a really fucking weird issue. Sometimes when you're playing, you will see a few frames, like a split second, maybe 10 frames or something, of... even less than that, of a player, and it'll appear and then disappear, and it'll look like a person, and I call this... We call these ghost players... the fucked up thing about this is that they seem to somehow be predicting where the enemy's going to go. Like, a lot of times you'll see a player's ghost, and then the player will actually run around the corner. Other times it'll just appear, and then you'll never see what player caused it. But there's this weird netcode issue where sometimes, very briefly, on your client end, a player's position will show up as being somewhere where it is not even remotely, and that's really fucking weird. There are some issues in this game where we talk about getting Battlefield 3'd. You can get shot around corners. You can shoot people around corners sometimes on your screen. In reality, in CSGO, this is nowhere near as much of an issue as in BF3, but it is there, and it should not be. With the hit registration, sometimes there will be situations where you will see blood fly out of a player. Like, you'll be shooting a player, nobody else around that could possibly be damaging them. You'll see blood fly out while you're shooting at them. And then they will kill you, and you will see that you did not hit them a single time, despite the fact that blood was spraying everywhere. That's obviously a hit registration issue, something that's gone wrong there. You'll see in CS you're not very accurate with most weapons, or pretty much any gun when you're running. You will see things like players just running across and shooting you in the face without ever stopping, sometimes in CSGO. But for a player watching it in spectator cam, they may see that player stop before firing, and I have a suspicion this is actually just to do with what players are actually doing being massively delayed on your client side sometimes. Sometimes you won't see a guy at all. He'll run around the corner and shoot you and kill you, and people will see it in spectator cam, but it will not show up on your screen, so he just walks out and shoots you and you don't react because you can't actually see him. These are fucked up things, especially in a game like CS that's meant to be a sort of competitively focused title. They're really screwed up things to happen, and the thing that bugs me, that shits me to tears about this, is that these kinds of issues are increasingly common and even considered acceptable in modern games. I mean, the number of chucklefucks on the Battlelog forums who defended that game's terrible netcode to death, and just said it was completely fine, any other solution would have just as many artifacts, derp. It's not fucking fine. This was something that game developers got right in the late 90s and early 2000s. These issues I've been talking about did not happen in CS 1.6 or CS Source. You could sometimes get shot around a corner about the amount of your ping. So if you're playing on a low ping server, you might get shot 30 to 50 milliseconds around a corner. And that's a point where you don't even notice it, and you just kind of go, well, you know, maybe like there was still a tiny fraction of my head sticking out or something, and he shot that. In this game, it's a lot longer than that, and that shouldn't happen. And again, in high latency situations, yes, you'd have more noticeable hit rego errors and stuff like that. But in low latency situations, in CS Source, this shit did not happen. And there's no reason that it should happen. It doesn't happen in Call of Duty 4 playing on dedicated servers. I don't get why these things slip into games and are considered acceptable, why the devs don't notice and go, why is the hit registration in this competitive game we're trying to make, where this kind of shit does matter a lot, worse than in Tribes Ascend, for example, an indie game? Or why is it worse than what we had in Half-Life in 1998? It's stupid, and it pisses me off. And I don't think these issues are going to be fixed in Go, because they never get fixed in any other game. BF3's netcode is still as janky as it was on launch. Maybe a tiny bit better. It's still pretty much the same shit. And it's probably going to be the same again in BF4, because people don't care. I don't get why people don't care. It makes the game feel so wrong and weird and inconsistent. Even if you're only playing not from a competitive perspective, it's fucking infuriating if you get shot around a corner. I don't know why this stuff happens now. It drives me fucking nuts. And I think it's too bad that it's in the game, and it probably won't be fixed in CSGO. But, to be fair, unlike in BF3, in CSGO, these issues are things that only happen sporadically every now and then. It's not all the time, this weird ghetto feeling. And so at the end of the day, I do still have fun playing CSGO. I do still think it's a good game, and I would recommend this to people who want something that's a little bit harder than most of the shooters, other shooters on the market. I certainly don't think that the issues in this game are bad enough to prevent somebody from buying it or playing it. They're just extremely annoying, and things that I don't understand how they got into the game, why the game is like this. So that's my opinion on the game, CSGO. I do like it. I'm probably going to upload more videos of it. I think it's one of the better shooters to be playing at the moment, especially if you're tired of BF3 and Call of Duty, which I am. This is the main shooter that I play now, main online shooter, because I still think it's one of the better games out there. But there are just these weird problems that I don't fucking get. So anyway, that's my opinion on CSGO. Let me know what you think of the game, particularly what you thought of what I said in the video, particularly if you also play CSGO. And until next time, thanks for watching. Troubletcat out.